Hi, thank you so much, and it's great to be here at the time. Okay, at the time that you're the most sleepy of all. Daydreaming while you're reading, then having to reread what you just read. How many times does that happen to you? It happens to me a lot during the day. I want to start with asking you a simple question. Try to think about your morning routines. Typical morning. How many of you, and please raise your arms, don't be shy, how many of you feel that they could use another hour or two of sleep? See a lot of hands up in the air, okay? How many of you think that they could do better if, in terms of performance, if they slept more? Wow, okay, that's great. And how many of you think they are sleep deprived on a chronic basis, on a daily basis? Wow. Okay. Don't worry, you're not alone. About 50 to 70 million Americans are, have some sort of sleep disorder, and the most common of them is sleep deprivation or chronic sleep loss. I want to take you back in time a little bit, 1960s. This is taken out of the National Sleep Foundation, Sleep in America poll of 2001 and 2002. This is a self-reported sleep duration. You can see that in the early 1960s, people reported sleeping about 8.5 to 9 hours on average. Early 2000s, this dropped down to less than 7 or close to 6.5 hours. I think this is a tremendous decrease in our sleep time over the last couple decades. This is about 20% decrease in sleep. Here, it's same data, but just for adolescents and preteens. This is again from the National Sleep Foundation, Sleep in America poll of 2006. They surveyed about 1,600 teens, preteens, and their guardians about sleep habits and about their sleep duration. You can see on the y-axis is their sleep time. On the x-axis is the grade level. And you can certainly see a significant drop, especially from middle school to high school, but even from elementary school to middle school. Basically, the orange area there shows you how much sleep deficit they have every single night during the weeknights. And juniors and seniors lack about 2 to 2.5 hours of sleep every school night. That's about, say, 10 to 12 hours a week. It's a full night of sleep for some of us, even 2 nights. So I think these numbers are huge. I chose that that quote as my topic today, as my title today, because I think this really emphasizes the power of sleep. And I wanted you to, I know that all of you probably understand the depth of this. Let him sleep, for when he wakes, he will move mountains, by Napoleon Bonaparte. I know you understand the depth of this, but I want you to walk out of here today understanding why is this so powerful, why sleep is so important. And particularly, and this previous speaker has touched about risk behavior in adolescents, and I think sleep has a major part of it. In fact, the cartoon he showed had a part of sleep there, and I'm going to touch on that too. Think sleep. I know the topic today is think, and I was trying to make a little connection here. A lot of times, young people don't consider sleep as essential, as important as other things, such as doing good in school, getting good grades, and participating in after-school activities. Sometimes people think they can perform well without getting enough sleep, or maybe not getting sleep at all. But I wanted to change that belief in you. I wanted to show you that this is not true. So although this is not a new innovation here, I'm not telling you anything that you haven't heard before. It's nothing new. In this highly competitive school environment, where people sometimes put sleep as their last priority, I think this is a context that is really important to convey. So it is an idea worth spreading. Oops. So sleep is as essential as eating and as breathing, but yet we don't consider it as essential. And the reason for it is because most of us, while we're asleep, we're unaware of what we're doing. So we go to bed, we wake up in the morning, and everything that happened in between is basically not remembered. In the definition of sleep, that's one of the definitions that I got, it states it's a reversible behavioral state of perceptual disengagement from an unresponsiveness to the environment. So if we're disengaged and we're not responsive, why would we care about it? Sounds almost like a waste of time to me, but it's not. Both the quality, but also the quantity of sleep are important. You cannot go with 2 or 4 hours of great sleep and do well, because it is also important to go through all the stages of sleep. And repeatedly, REM sleep has been shown to be involved in memory consolidation. Sleep has functions such as cell regeneration. So sleep has been linked to a lot of other things that cannot be achieved by other ways. Sleep is affected by genetics, but it's also affected by other factors such as environment. It's affected by society, and it's affected by social norms. So today, it is totally normative to skip sleep for maybe for work, for schoolwork, for projects. And it's easy to do it because everybody else does that. Some young people, I don't want to say adolescents, but some young people may even brag about pulling an all-nighter for just a schoolwork or for a project. People think that sleeping less is cool. But I want you to walk out of here today knowing that it is not, that it is so important to get your full night of sleep in order to perform well and to stay healthy. So why is sleep so important? I'm going to touch on several points, but there's many, many other reasons why sleep is so important. I'm going to touch on the ones that are most important and relate to you, I hope. Sleep has been linked to obesity, and sleep loss on its own, regardless of any other sleep disorder, has been associated with obesity. And the mechanism why it is associated with obesity is going to be explained in this slide that I took out of one of the medical journals, published just a couple months ago in March of 2016. It shows you here, and I'm sorry I don't have a pointer, but it shows you here that there is a hormonal effect on sleep. So if there are some hormones that are released while you're asleep, hormones such as appetite hormones, leptin and ghrelin, that cause you to feel that you have increased appetite. There's some hedonic aspect of sleep loss, such as you just have more time to spend eating. You also use food as a reward. You use food as fuel. These all increase your energy intake. You eat more food. On the other hand, you feel sleepy and fatigued, and you don't have any energy to go out and exercise, so that decreases your energy expenditure. These two increase the risk for obesity. Diabetes have been linked to sleep loss, and not just by means of obesity, but also just sleep loss on its own can lead to increased risk for diabetes, again, by hormonal pathway. There's a hormone in your body called insulin growth factor number 1, which is responsible for glucose control and also responsible for growth. And if you don't sleep enough, the hormone release is disturbed, and therefore you're at high risk of having diabetes. Heart disease and high blood pressure, I'm not going to touch much about that, but there is higher prevalence of high blood pressure in teenagers and young adults, not only due to obesity, but also just because of sleep loss. Mood disorders, this is a big one. Who doesn't feel depressed or anxious sometimes? A lot of times, mood disorders are misdiagnosed as such, but it's only due to sleep loss. ADHD, the diagnosis of ADHD has gone up in the last decades And it may be just correlating to that graph that I showed you before, which shows dramatic decrease in sleep time and sleep duration. It is very easy to use medications such as amphetamines or other stimulants to overcome the ADHD or daytime tiredness. But those medications cannot replace sleep because sleep has a function to it, such as the memory consolidation, such as the cell regeneration, and these cannot be replaced by medications. So sleep deprivation leads to more stress leads to more sleep deprivation, because you're stressed, you can't fall asleep. And then it leads to more sleep deprivation, which leads to more stress, and I can go on and on and on. And this is just a vicious cycle that needs to be broken somewhere. The next bullet point that I wanted to touch on is performance. It's been shown again and again and again in research, and I'm going to talk about one of the research studies, that performance is affected, not only academic performance, but physical performance. Sports injuries and car crashes are related to that. If you don't sleep enough, your performance declines, and a lot of people don't pay attention. They don't think they perform worse. But look at that study. This is a device that measures psychomotor vigilant task. It was developed by Dr. David Dinges out of the University of Pennsylvania. He's one of the gurus on sleep restriction. And on the left side, you can see the old version of the device. On the right side, you can see the newer iPad version. All you have to do is basically a video game. All you have to do is when the red dot appears, you have to press the button, and it measures how fast you did that. Whether you had any lapses, means that you missed any red dots, or whether you have any false alarms, where you press the screen without having a red dot. And this is one of the gold standards to measure behavioral alertness and attention. And this is one of the studies published in 2007 by Dr. Dinges, where they took a group of about 35 people, and they grouped them into three groups. One group had an opportunity to sleep for 8 hours. Second group had an opportunity to sleep for 6 hours. And the last group only had an opportunity to sleep for 4 hours. They tested them every single day for 14 days, 2 weeks, with this psychomotor vigilant task test. And as you can see on the graph here on the left side, the higher the number, the worse they did. And you can see almost linear increase, or I should say almost linear decrease in their function or increase in their lapses. The higher the number, from 0 to 15, the more lapses they had in their attention. I think that the interesting thing is actually the graph on the right side, because this graph shows you the subjective sleepiness rating of the subjects themselves. They were given a questionnaire every day, and the questionnaire basically asked them to rate it from 1 to 9. 1 is not sleepy at all. 9 is very sleepy. And look at the graphs there. Obviously, the 8-hour group didn't have any concern about being sleepy. The 6 and 4 hours group, I thought, was extremely interesting, because in the first 2 days, they felt like they might have been a little more sleepy, but that has kind of plateaued later. So they had no perception at all of them doing so bad on those tests. And I think that's what actually leads to our society to think that they can do well, they can adjust, or they can adapt to chronic sleep loss. After 2 weeks of losing sleep, they felt they're doing okay, yet they weren't doing that well. So what can be worse than doing bad on your video games, just like that one? Of course, it's drowsy driving, and I think there's a little bit of talks about it before, and it has to do straight with your loss of sleep. This data is taken out of the CDC website. 1 in every 25 adults reports of falling asleep while driving in the last 30 days. I'm not talking about feeling sleepy, but think about falling asleep while driving. 1 in every 25 adults. In 2013, there were 72,000 crashes, 44,000 injuries, and 800 deaths due to drowsy driving. These numbers are actually underestimated because not everybody actually admits for drowsy driving. There's about 6,000 crashes a year, fatal crashes a year due to drowsy driving. The last thing that I wanted to talk to you about today is risk-taking behavior. And I'm glad that I came right after your talk because you haven't touched on that. Adolescents do tend to engage in risk-taking behaviors. And I think that on top of what we heard before is sleep loss. Adolescents tend to lose a lot of sleep. And I'll touch base on it soon. And some of the risk behaviors are really due to just sleep loss. This is just the title from a paper written by Dr. Jody Mindell. Dr. Mindell is a professor of psychology at St. Joseph University, and she's also the co-director of the sleep centers at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia here, and she was my mentor during my fellowship. And this article from 2005 speaks about sleep and risk-taking behavior in adolescents. Behaviors such as engaging in physical fights, smoking, drinking alcohol, using drugs, and risk for depression and suicide are up there. I don't want you to get into that next slide because it's really busy, but all I wanted you to take from this slide is that this has been conducted. It's a youth risk behavior survey that was conducted in 2007 and basically split students into two groups, students who slept less than 8 hours and students who slept more than 8 hours. And those who slept less than 8 hours engaged significantly more in risks such as the ones that I highlighted here, and I'll tell you which they are because you definitely cannot read that. The risks that we talked before: smoking, using drugs, drinking alcohol, engaging in fights, and then more depression and obviously suicidal attempts. This is a typical picture from the library, I guess, and I guess some of you here feel the same now. So how can we really make a change? I think that on a personal level, each of you should think about themselves as, you know, what are we doing wrong? Why are we not sleeping enough? How can these help us do better and perform better? I just like this illustration. It's taken from an article about a trail runner who was trying to change his circadian clock, change his inner clock in order to perform better. You all know that we have an inside clock inside us, the circadian clock, which is driven by cues from the environment. The strongest cue is light that inhibits the secretion of melatonin, which is a sleep promoting hormone that's secreted in our brain. So things you can do in order to help reset your circadian clock are things such as avoiding caffeine, such as not using electronics in bed, because not only the electronics shed more light, and blue light especially, which inhibits the secretion of melatonin, you also engage in social media and you're involved in tweeting and texting. So your phones and computers should stay out of your bed. And how can we make a difference in terms of society? This is maybe a little harder, but it's still very important. As a nation, we are all sleep deprived. This map is taken out of the CDC website as well, and it shows you the average school start time. You must have heard that there's a huge movement around the country to try to move high school and middle school start time to a later time. And I just want to point out here, the dark brown states are the ones who start school the latest, as late as 8:33. And the lightest yellow are the states that start school the earliest, as early as 7:40, according to the slide. So there we are in Pennsylvania, 1 out of 4 states that start the earliest of them all. And here in Lower Merion School District, even worse, we start at 7:30, earlier than that. But this is an average. This is the morbidity and mortality weekly report. It's published by the CDC every week, and this is from August of 2015. about later school start time for middle schooler and high schoolers. And this is, this is a policy statement of the American Academy of Pediatrics published in 2014 in Pediatrics about later school start time. I do believe that we need to move on with that and make that change for our society because, like I said, your internal clock doesn't let you go to sleep earlier, and your best sleep occurs in the morning as adolescents. However, I don't think that this should be done in the account of the younger kids or elementary schools, so I don't think a flip should be done. In any case, there's a lot of logistics behind it, and such as school buses and sports, and it probably will take a couple more years for us to move on with that. With that said, if you can't sleep, exercise more, but in the morning, not before you go to bed. Try to have a healthy diet and avoid caffeine, and maybe some comparative English literature will help. Thank you.